Welcome back to the JSFL. It is officially the end of year three, and we got awards and stuff podcast before the playoffs. So let's start off with that weekly recap. To start the week, we had the Businessmen at Fishers. Businessmen looked like they were doing pretty good in this game, but the Fishers start creeping back, but the Businessmen finish and they hold them off. Both teams going 4-8, so a pretty solid Thursday night game. Then you got to the 1 p.m. games, the Gila Monsters at Hounds. Phoenix is showing they were better. Put Cincinnati down, and yeah, they just show dominance on the road, which is good because they got their star quarterback back and puts them out of relocation status. Then you had the Bats at the Earthquake. Bats fighting for their playoff hopes, and they did win, beating Terry Foster on his return. So interesting situation there in LA. And yes, I've heard from sources LA is starting Jacob Kidd for the playoffs. So that is a very big news coming out of Charlotte, especially because those two are playing each other next week. So they didn't really like what Foster was doing, and Jacob Kidd's been on a hot streak. So they're going to start the rookie for the playoffs. So interesting shot in LA's first playoff appearance this year. Yeah, that was a nice win, a point away for the Bats. Then you had the Power at Enforcers. Um, Houston's been fighting some injuries on the defense, and the Power have just been steamrolling, and they steamroll Houston, absolutely killed them. That number one defense had nothing on the Power, and yeah, the Power they're looking pretty dangerous, and they actually with that game have the first round bye now. Then the win at Predators. Predators saw that game, kind of must have hurt their spirits because they got shellacked by the wind. I think it was like two scores. Just the wind beating them down. Harrison having a nice final game for the season, and Hudson kind of looked clueless on his return back. Then the Monday night, what a better Monday night game. Couldn't fast for one. Musicians at the Natives in Seattle. Musicians um, without Dante, Seattle without Lee and without Smith. But yeah, this great game for the Musicians. They were just fighting, and then that 2 minute warning, both teams going back and forth, goes to overtime. Punt from New Orleans. Seattle fumbles Vincent Morgan, and then New Orleans just kicks the field goal. And what a game we had on Monday night. It was really just a good week of football to end off year three. And so with that, we have the playoff picture. And your playoff picture, number one with the first round buys, the 9-3 Seattle Natives. Number two, also with that first round bye, the Detroit Power 8-4. Three is the Houston Enforcers at 8-4. Four is the Charlotte Bats at 6-6. They win the East. Five is the LA Earthquake at 9-3. They get the fifth seed. And six is the New Orleans Musicians at 8-4 with the sixth seed. So that means your wild card matchups are the Musicians going to Houston, and then the Earthquake head to Charlotte to fight the Bats. So I'm expecting a pretty good wild card weekend, one of the best we've seen in a while. Um, so that is your playoff picture. And we do have the relocation winner. It is Cincinnati. So the Hounds relocated now was from Cleveland to Cincinnati. Cincinnati wasn't able to stay. So now we have the Chicago Wolves. Usually I would do a bunch of options, but I figured I'd pick it this year. So I did pick Chicago. Um the new city for the North. Let me figure that out real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, so I did the spinning. It is Milwaukee, so Milwaukee will be the next one in case Chicago doesn't work out. So yeah, there you go. So we got that all done. Now we have the draft order that we had that all done. So the draft order for the first six teams, because we don't have the rest. Number one will be the Chicago Wolves. Number two would be Minneapolis. Number three, New York again. Four, Phoenix. They don't usually pick this high. Five, Kansas City. And six, Atlanta. So there is your top six for the draft order. Then we got the power ranking. So how it finally shifted out. 12, I had the Fishers. Just not able to do great things this year, and um, it's just really not a great season for Minneapolis, man. They just didn't have anything standing out. 11-5 Cincinnati. I had them higher. A bad week against Phoenix though, so yeah, not too happy with Cincinnati's season, especially with all the acquisitions they acquired. Just weren't able to piece it together. I think the problem might be quarterback. So we'll see what they do with Hastings this year. 10th, the Businessmen. That defense is really good this year. The offense is a problem, man. Been 12th last 2 years. It's just not good for the Businessmen. 9th is the Phoenix Gila Monsters. Um, Bad year. I mean, they could have maybe made a run for it if they had Tepsi for the whole season, but I don't know. They might have had 2 more wins, but yeah, 4-8 for the Gila Monsters is not great. So yeah, they fall in 9th. 8th is the Predators at 5-7. Got beat by the Wind pretty bad, but they were fighting for the playoff push. Probably got disheartened by Charlotte winning, going to the playoffs. So, but yeah, a pretty solid season for Atlanta. Nothing crazy. Then you have number 7, the Kansas City Wind. They did have a solid season. They couldn't together those wins, but again, Kansas City always fights with the good teams. They're just gonna go 4-8 here. Just when they have Chad Harrison, the offense. I mean, they missed a lot of parts, but they're still clicking on a lot of cylinders. Defense, they need to piece that together. It's rough, but yes, Kansas City, I see some future. So 6. The Charlotte Bats are 6-6. They go number 6. Good win against LA. They're up and down, and we'll see how they can do in this postseason. Maybe try to make a push. We'll see. 5 is the New Orleans Musicians. Skies, I think this is the last run. We'll see. But he's got to do something, man. He went 10 for 10 this year and touchdowns to picks. Cole Nicholas is looking pretty solid on the bench there. We'll see what happens. But yeah, New Orleans, they're going to fall at number 5 here. Nice win against Seattle, though. 4, Houston, just beat so badly by Detroit. The injuries kind of hurting them. Um, Defense, I mean, it's just an amazing team, but we'll see how they can do in the playoffs with all these injuries piling up. 3 is LA. Just got terribly, or no, that was last week. Charlotte wasn't able to beat them. I think they're gonna go roll with kids. We'll see how they do. But Foster just was sloppy with the ball. 2 is Detroit. They've been steamrolling everyone. Just a really good team, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the playoffs here. And number 1, Seattle. I still have them at number 1. An amazing team, in my opinion, the best team in the JSFL. Um, they fought with New Orleans, and those injuries on the defense, like the safety, not having Jonah Lee really hurt them. So he'll be back for the divisional. So not too concerned there. So we'll see what's out. Seattle can do in this postseason. And they have not won a postseason game, surprisingly. It's kind of funny. So yeah, that is the power rankings. Their players of the week. Let's get into those. As we had for offensive player of the week, it was Kermit Poe once again, 21 for 26, 267 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 attempts on the ground, 90 yards, and a touchdown. So another solid week for Kermit Poe. I think how many players of the week did he have? He had one in week 12, one in week 10, one in week 5, and one in week 4. So Kermit Poe had 4 players of the week, offensive player of the week. Defensive player of the week is Ian Petty, the defensive tackle from Kansas City. He had a great week. 4 solo tackles, 3 assists, 4 sacks, and a safety. So great week from Ian Petty. Yeah, the offensive and defensive players of the week. Your injury report, it's pretty short this week because we only have to go over the teams that are in the playoffs. So New York is out. Then you have Charlotte. Also, the teams that are in the divisional weren't considered for injury concerns so they're going to be the same when I read them off because they're not playing. So Charlotte, Aaron Hardy, he'll be back this week, and Roger Andrews returns next week. No new injuries for that Charlotte side, so relatively healthy going into that divisional or wild card. Atlanta did not make the postseason; they had a lot of injuries. New Orleans, no, they had Leonard Roy out for the season. Landon Dante back for the divisional, and Malcolm Perry out for the season. No new injuries there. Houston, Mel Dexter, a new one, back for the divisional. Only misses a week. That injury bothering him, and it continues. Eric Prosted back for the championship. Patrick Hill returns this week. Olin Clemens and John Reed for the divisional. So they'll have to deal a game without them against their rival. Phoenix out. The Kansas City Wind out. LA. Kane Hollister returns this week along with Will Lawson, so they get those linebackers back. That is huge. Ross Williams out for the season still. Esteban Andrade still out for the season. Salvador Jacobs to the divisional, and along with Roland Lemus. So if they want to keep going, they're going to have to fight a hard game against the Bats. Seattle, they only have Kendall Carls is back for the championship. Sheldon Lee will be back for the divisional, so when they play. And Ronaldo Smith out for the season. That is Seattle. Minneapolis out. Detroit. Hugo Bell's out for the championship. That is it because they didn't have any new ones. And Chicago is out. So, yeah, that is your injury report, offense and defensive stats. So, actually, I want to inject a new defense, best unit of all time. The best new unit of all time is that Houston defense, the best defense in the history of the sport. 3,092 yards allowed, which beats their last year's record of 3,155 yards allowed. The best offense this year was the Seattle Natives with 4,290 yards, falling about 150 short of the tied record between them and last year's Kansas City Wind. So, no new record for offense, but defense, certainly. So let's go into those offenses. The worst one is the Businessmen. Then 11th was the Predators. 10th was the Fishers. 9th, Wind. 8th, Gila Monsters. 7th, Bats. 6th, Enforcers. 5th, Musicians. 4th, Hounds. 3rd, Earthquake. 2nd, Power. 1st, Natives. The rushing offense, 12th was the Bats. 11th, Wind. 10th, Musicians. 9th, Predators. 8th, Earthquake. 7th, Businessmen. 6th, Fishers. 5th, Hounds. 4th, Gila Monsters. 3rd, Enforcers. 2nd, Natives. And 1st, Power. If we did a stat for best like rushing offense and rushing defense and stuff like that, I think Detroit would have won best rushing offense of all time. They had over 2,000 yards on the ground, which I think actually, if I look, almost tied their passing yards. So yeah, best passing offense is now 12th was the Businessmen, 11th Predators, 10th Fishers, 9th Gila Monsters, 8th Enforcers, 7th Power, 6th Hounds, 5th Musicians, 4th Wind, 3rd Earthquake, 2nd Bats, and 1st Natives. So that's it for offense. The defensively, 12th was the Wind, 11th Fishers, 10th Hounds, 8th Bats, 7th or 9th Bats, 8th Natives, 7th Gila Monsters, 6th Predators, 5th Earthquake, 4th Power, 3rd Businessmen, 2nd Musicians, and 1st Enforcers. And there's a 5-yard difference between the Houston Enforcers and the New Orleans Musicians. So rushing defenses, 12th was the Hounds. Theirs was abysmal this year. 11th Gila Monsters, 10th Fishers, 9th Wind, 8th Earthquake, 7th Predators, 6th Bisman, 5th Bats, 4th Natives, 3rd Musicians, 2nd Power, and 1st Enforcers. In your passing defenses, 12th was the Wind, 11th Fishers, 10th Bats, 9th Power, 8th Natives, 7th Predators, 6th Earthquake, 5th Musicians, 4th Bisman, 3rd Gila Monsters, 2nd Enforcers, and 1st was the Hounds with the addition of Byron Baxter. And Ricardo Sanchez was good, Andrew Saunders. Yeah. Um, how bad their pass or how bad their rush defense was. Their rush defense almost a lot more than their pass defense. That's how crazy the difference was between the two. But yeah, so that is your offense and defense for year 3 to finish it out. Then you have, let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into the awards. So now we have the awards. And your MVP this year, no surprises, Kermit Poe, man. Let's look at Kermit Poe's stats as he had another great stellar year. Find Kermit Poe here. 246 completions off 336 attempts, 2,860 yards, 19 touchdowns to 5 picks, but his rushing game sets him aside. 63 attempts on the ground, 588 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 5 broken tackles. Kermit Poe just puts it all together, man. That's simple, nothing to it. Rookie of the year, we gave it to Chad Harrison again. No surprise. He had a great year, man. He really just kept Kansas City in all those games. He doesn't run the ball, which if he ran the ball, he would definitely be like with up with Kermit Poe. But Chad Harrison, he's always looking to throw. And let's look at his stats. Two, 268 completions off 382 attempts. He had 2,888 yards, 18 touchdowns, 4 picks, 6 carries on the ground for -6 yards. They were all meals. He did not take a single rushing attempt all season. He's a pocket passer. And then your defensive player of the year or defensive rookie of the year, Zachary Wong, man, he just had a great season. Was like leading defensive rookie of the year for most of the season, and he finishes it out with one good Week 12 game. And in solo tackles, he had 51. Assists had 47. 12 tackles for a loss, a sack, and two forced fumbles, man. He just knew how to get to the ball carrier, would get in the backfield, and he would make some turnovers. So just a great player, just really helping that Charlotte defense become better. Because let's see, last this year that defense they ranked ninth, so not crazy, but I'm pretty sure they were worse last year if I look at it, find it here. So that defense for Charlotte last year ranked 10th. So they got him up one. But I mean, I don't know. He's just a great piece for that linebacking core and did a lot for them. Now we have offensive player of the year, and that was Ross Williams. He did miss those final 2 weeks, but Ross Williams he does hold on to offensive player of the year because Harrison and Poe were above him. Little was trying to get in there to get his third offensive player of the year, but he does not. It is the running back from LA, Ross Williams. So let's go over those stats for him. 181 attempts off 788 yards, six touchdowns, 34 broken tackles, had 46 receptions for 316 yards and a touchdown receiving. So Ross Williams, just great season for him. Did all he could for LA in the regular season. Now they're gonna have to go without him in the postseason. And then your defensive player of the year, Roland Lemus. No surprise, he did get injured for that last week, but Chris Johnson, he was not too far behind him, so got to give props to him as well. But Roland Lemus, 56 solo tackles, 23 assists, 11 tackles for loss, 29 and a half sacks, almost broke 30, two fumbles, and a safety. So Roland Lemus, man, just not a guy you want to deal with off the edge. Then you have the best quarterback, Kermit Poe. He wins it. We already went over the stats for him. He also for quarterback we do passing, not running, and he still won over Chad Harrison, but it was a lot closer. Best running back was Ross Williams. We went over him. Taylor Little, also very close. Receiver was Eric Fitzgerald, and Eric Fitzgerald, he was fighting with some guys, but man, Harrison knew to give him the ball, and that is how Harrison did so good. One of the reasons he did so good is because he knew to give Eric Fitzgerald the ball. So Eric Fitzgerald, 59 receptions, 773 yards, and 8 touchdowns, which is really good for the amount of time that the JSFL season's crunched into. And then best tight end was Jesse Flowers. So he actually pulled it out from Lowell Snyder, probably because of his touchdowns. 59 receptions, 660 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That was 6 out of the 10 touchdowns that Seth's guys threw. He liked to find that tight end. Well, who wouldn't? He's such a big frame, such a big guy. Kind of hard to miss Jesse Flowers. Then at best D lineman, Roland Lemus, 3 years in a row for him. Best linebacker, David Medina doesn't win it this year. It's Chris Johnson, as we were talking about before, as he had a crazy season, almost caught up to Roland Lemus' sacks. He had 54 solo tackles, 31 assists, 19 tackles for loss, 27 sacks, and two forced fumbles. So a really good season for Chris Johnson. Helped that New Orleans defense become so ferocious. Then you had defensive back of the year, and this one is going to go to second-year safety Ricky Golden. So he had a really good season, almost won it last year. He's able to win it this year. And yeah, that was really good for Ricky Golden's, and I will be right back. Okay, so Ricky Golden's, he had 35 solo tackles, 39 assists, 5 tackles for loss, a sack, 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles, and a safety. So great job from Ricky Golden's. A great second year, and we'll see if he stays in Kansas City. So we already went over best offense and defense. Now I believe we go into the records and this year's tops. So we'll start with this year's tops, and if it's a record, we'll go over the records and say how close they were and stuff. But yeah, so let's do it. This year's tops. Quarterbacks, we'll start with completions. Harrison had 268, no record. The record was set by Tony Dackerson last year with 275, so pretty close. And attempts, Harrison also won with 382, which was not a record. It was set by the quarterback from Kansas State last year, Kyle Shooter. He has 399. So again, very close for for Harrison. So then yards this year, Chad Harrison again, 2,888, but not even close. Well, somewhat close. Maybe one more good game. It was Kermit Poe in season one, 3,250, as he didn't touch the record this year. Touchdowns, Harrison this year for 19, the record from season 1, also set by Kermit Poe, is 23. Interceptions, Hastings this year 14, doesn't touch Terry Foster's last year record of 18. So four off for Hastings, and yeah. So no quarterback. Or actually, we have one more. Rushing points this year is Sean Richardson with 112, and he did not break Kermit Poe's of season 2 last year, 125. So no quarterback records were broken this year. Running back attempts, 191 for Owen Castles, does not even come close to Ross Williams last year, 254. As injuries were added more this year, so got to give him a little bit of a break. Yards this year, one back gets over 1,000. That's Taylor Little, 1,045. He does not even come close to his season 1 record, which was 1,493. So yeah. Then touchdowns, also Taylor Little with 10. Doesn't get to Willie Rogers' season 2 record of 14. Then broken tackles, Julio Jones 44. Doesn't come close to Taylor Little's season 2 record of 63. Receiving points, Julio Jones actually gets a record 107 receiving points, and he beat the record set by Ronaldo Hoskins. Then you have receivers receptions, Eric Fitzgerald 59, doesn't get to Tyler Jackson 65 set in season 1. Then you have Tyler Jackson with yards, 804 this year. Doesn't touch Albert Moore's 1,044 last year from season 2. And wide receiver touchdowns was tied. Eric Fitzgerald had 8. He tied the record set by Albert Moore in season 2. He ties it with 8. And the tight ends receptions, Lowell Snyder 73. Doesn't get to one more, would have been the tied record by Danny Edwards last year. Then you had Kurt Hammond with yards this year, 748. Doesn't get to 829 of Sheldon Larson from last year. Then the touchdowns was tied this year. McDaniel and Flowers, both with 6. And they don't get close to Chet Wood's 9 touchdowns from season 1 for Phoenix. So yeah, O-lines. The sacks given up stat is tied. It's been tied 3 years in a row now, 15. So he joins Mitch Ryans and Ben Robbins. So yeah, Brandon Optic has that record. He's from Kansas City, the right tackle. Then defensively, solo tackles, David Medina, 69. Does not get the Henry Virgin season 1 75 record. Assists, David Medina as well, 64. Cannot get to Gary Riley, 67. Pretty close, though, from season 2. TFLs, Chris Johnson wins, 19 TFLs. Does not get Luke Frankie's 22 from last year. Roland Lemus, he gets his own sack record, adds 3 more to his total, 29.5. So season 3 sack record. Interceptions, Darius Simp has 5. Does not get Byron Baxter from year 1 with 7. Fumbles, Nicholas Stone at 5. He breaks a record. So season 3, Detroit Power Nicholas Stone gets the fumble record. And touchdowns, Tyler Holmes ties the record with 3 this year. He ties with Sean Flores and Paris Matz. They both had respectively 3 last year from their teams. Yeah, those are the records. So 2. Let's see how many records. We had 3 records and 2 tied records this year, so not too bad. So those are your records and your tops this year. And then now, all we got left is the playoff predictions. So let's start with the wild card, man. First game is going to be Houston New Orleans heading to Houston. And with those injuries, man, this should be a good one. A nice divisional battle. Probably defensive. I could see it going offense, though. Oof. Who makes the mistakes? I think Houston's going to hold on to it somehow. I think with the injuries, I would usually lean New Orleans here, especially after last week, but I can't be going off that high. I think Houston's got to do it, man. I think they make a play late in the game that wins it for them. So I'm going to go Houston to win in the wild card at home. Then you got Charlotte and LA. And if Foster was starting, I would say this is a Charlotte win, but Jacob Kidd, man, he's savvy, a young guy. Without Lemus and Jacobs, it's going to be hard, man. But give me Jacob Kidd and the LA Earthquake to advance. Then you have, what would be first? It would be Seattle and LA. So Seattle and LA, another divisional matchup. Shelly's going to be back, man. But they do get Lemus and Jacobs back if they make it that far. Oof. I gotta go Seattle, man. I think this is the time they finally win a playoff game and they go to the chip. So give me Seattle and then Detroit and Houston. Houston's gonna get the pieces back. But ooh, Detroit, they like to choke in the playoffs, but give me the choking teams go into the chip. So give me Detroit against Seattle. Oh, that's a good one because can Seattle stop the run without Smith? I mean, they have Hernandez, but I see problems. Also, I see problems with that secondary of Detroit. What did Detroit's pass defense rank this year? I don't think it was amazing by any standards. Their pass defense was ninth. Ooh, that's tough. Natives was eighth though, so not much better. But I just think the natives, man, they're too explosive. I have the natives winning it. So that's my last podcast before I see you guys in well, I'll see you guys in the games, but the last next podcast will be next year. Great off season, great college series we're gonna have coming up. I don't know if I'll do podcasts for those, maybe mini pods, but yeah, I'll see you guys. New Orleans going to Houston for the wild card matchup.